Hello, this is Mike McMaster from the Wood County Museum, and we are on our third installation of the odds and ends of Wood County. And what we will talk about today is an odd, and it is something that we have driven past all the time. I can remember seeing it as a little boy from Henry County driving on the Wood County side of the Maumee River. And we see it all the time. And maybe you know what it is because I sure don't. Here we go. This, that cone-shaped mortared together stone. That is not field stone. And on the top is a rather large, what I believe, sandstone ball perfectly carved into a sphere on top of it. Is it a property marker? Is it a park or historic marker? Is it simply a lawn decoration? Now, let's if you bring it up to certain people, they get very angry because they assert that it is a property marker and that we should stop talking about it. But I will keep talking about it. Now let's look at where it is exactly. It is on State Route 65, the River Road in Wood County. It is in between Weston and Benshotter Road. That little X marks where it is at. Here's a picture of it now. Where I am standing, I am looking west. On the left side of the picture, almost exactly where that arrow is, very close, is State Route 65. There is not much land there. On the right side, on the north side of it, is a drop off almost straight down and not much land straight into the Maumee River. It does not mark very much property. However, on the north side of State Route 65 right here, you can pull quite a few cars into this location. And I will bring that up. Why is that? Now, is it a property marker? If you look um, at State Route 65, the River Road, that little X there marks where it's at, and you put those little white lines, you can see the river lots, how they were divided up. And if you notice, that X is not on the corner of any of those properties. It is not on the property. It is on the north side of State Route 65 on the riverside. It doesn't seem to mark any of them. Up at the top right of the screen is Nazareth Hall. If you drive past Nazareth Hall going to Grand Rapids, Ohio, you can see it. Has nothing to do with Nazareth Hall. It is a little bit farther down the road. Now, I thought to myself, Washington Township has this little pointy triangle that points into Grand Rapids Township, and wouldn't it just be perfect if that little monument sits right at the tip of that triangle and marks the boundary of Washington Township? But as you can see, it does not. So that is another guess that is out the window. Now, let's look at property historically. This is an 1858 Smith map. This is a plat map of Wood County, 1858. It still shows the town of Otsego on the Maumee River. That river road, as you can see in that section of Washington Township, has 35 acres on the north side of the road. River Road, State Route 65 was not always like it is today. And as you can see, it does not mark any of the corners of that property, either 35 or the 37 on the other side of it. It doesn't seem to mark any of those properties. Let's go in time. Here's a 1912 Atlas of Wood County, also plat book. It shows Kettle Run Creek. It shows the property of George and Clayton Rogers. Now, it does not mark the corner of any of their property. The river road at the time is a little bit closer to the river. It does not appear as if there is 35 acres on the north side, but it doesn't seem to mark their property either. Now, what is just up the road? Otsego Park, built by the CCC in 1937. And if you look at the stonework on that building at Otsego Park, they did an excellent job. That stonework is done excellent. It's just professional work. It is not very far from the stone monument that we are talking about. The stone looks very similar. The sphere, the ball at the top, expertly carved. Could it have been just leftover stone at a scenic overlook in 1937? I do not know. Now, there are other historic monuments. Is this some sort of historic monument? Well, we have talked about Miltonville before. That's an Anthony Wayne Parkway that was put there in 1930. The Maumee Indian Mission School sign, which is today at Otsego Park, was put there in 1930. I'm sorry, the Miltonville was put there in 1959. So it is neither one of those markers. It's a ways from both. Now, the Anthony Wayne Parkway Board in 1955 had a map of existing features, historical parks and places and markers on the Maumee River. And it does not appear to be any of them. I can identify what each of these are. One of those is the Maumee Indian Mission School. One of them is the parks in near Grand Rapids. Now, the 1960 report lists those existing features, and each one of these, the Fort Meigs markers, Miltonville sign, Pemberville Park, the Indian Mission School, General Hall's Camp. Now it shows the British Battery and Dudley's Feet. Those are both in Lucas County and the proposed Thurston and Miltonville wildlife areas. It does not appear to be any of those. And if you draw an arrow from Weston, there's our monument. There is Otsego Park. It is definitely not Otsego Park. There's Fallen Timbers, Anthony Wayne Parkway, Indian Mission School, Otsego Park. It is definitely not any of those. So we can rule out that it was a historical marker. There is no plaques or writing on our stone monument. There's our stone monument. There's no writing on it. Those, like I said, are not field stones. This is not a small object. I am 6'1", and if I raise my long arm, I do not think I could touch that sandstone sphere, that sandstone ball at the top. If I jumped, I might be able to touch the end of the stones. It is very tall. To me, this looks 1920s, 1930s. It does not look 1820s. That mortar is still good after all the years. I have been looking at it for 50 years. People have been looking at it much longer than that, and it is still whole. This is not just a pile of stones. It's very expertly made. So is it a park? Is it a scenic overlook? I do not know. Now, my friend at the engineer's office, like I said, expertly made, sent me this 1923 map. There's the Washington Grand Rapids Township line, and circled, that is a cottage that was there in the road survey 1923. It does not show that marker. That cottage is very near where the stone marker is today. Now, I was recently told a story. People who went to high school in Grand Rapids, Ohio, they knew in the 1940s the family who lived in that cottage. They were not the family who built that cottage. I do not know who built it. I do not know who lived there in 1923. When the children who lived in that cottage went to school in the 1940s, that marker was there. And they did not know what that stone marker was. In 1940s, they did not know what it was. Now, one of the ladies who lived in the cottage, she was a young girl. She had heard that somebody told her mother that there was a guy who wanted to build something with stone, and he built it. And that is all she can remember. And it does not really tell us much. But we can at least date that that stone marker was there in the 40s. People were still living in that cottage, and they did not know what it was. So your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. Now, our last odds and ends of Wood County. This is an end. This is the mystery of Mr. Lewis F. Lambert of Henry Township, Wood County. And there is a naval battle. We will get to his story. In 1832, at the age of about 50, Lewis F. Lambert came to Wood County with the family of George Carroll. Now, in 1832, Lewis Lambert, at 50 years old, he would have been considered quite old. And the Carroll family, if you remember, planted the seedlings purchased from the Johnny Appleseed farm. Now, in 1832, George Carroll marked his section southeast, southeast, south of section 32, where that red box is, and Lewis Lambert in that light blue box. So they were neighbors to each other, helping each other out. Now, was Lewis Lambert a real person? Yes, he was. In the Beers book, it states that the first 30 voters of 1839, Lewis Lambert is one of them. He was the first Henry Township clerk in 1836, important job. He was a Henry Township trustee in 1841 as well. He shows up in the 1850 census at about 68 years old. Born in about 1782, and it shows he was born in Russia. The 1860 census at age 78, quite old for that day and age. Birth about 1872, shows him living near the Carrolls, shows his birthplace as Prussia, which is today part of Germany. Not an uncommon error. Now, Lambert is a very English or French name, and Lambrecht, well, it could have been a shortened version of a German or a very Dutch name. So we have to think to ourselves, Perhaps he was born in Prussia. Now, here is his story. At the time he was 15 years old, Louis Lambert served 16 years in the Navy from 1797 to 1812. Now, he either served in the Russian or Prussian Navy, and he probably served in the Russian Navy. Prussia didn't have much of a Navy. Now, I miraculously found a list of surnames in St. Petersburg, Russia, and guess what name I found? Lambert, spelled exactly like our man in Henry Township. Now, who was he fighting? He was most likely in the Russian Navy during the wars with Napoleon Bonaparte from 1803 to 1815. And here is his story. An engagement with a ship of France, a mast in the top of which Louis Lambert was at work, was cut down by a cannonball. Lambert was thrown violently to the deck of the vessel and fractured his skull so severely that he never fully recovered. Now, they also state that he was an educated, honest man, and his life was one of usefulness. He was the faithful clerk during most of the time of service of the treasurer of Hancock County. So even though he might have had this debilitating head injury, he was one of the first pioneers in Wood County, and he was a respected, honest, and educated man his entire life. So his fellow neighbors, the earliest pioneers, had great respect for him, and he lived quite a long time. That is the last slide that I have, and I hope you will tune in for odds and ends of Wood County Part 4.